is what they called the Korean War. It was the forgotten war. It was not publicized as Vietnam was. People didn't realize what was going on. It was the first part of the Cold War, stop communist aggression.
I remember the death and destruction, war as it is.
It wasn't a single day that somebody didn't get killed, whether it be from mortar fragments, whether they got killed on patrol, or whatever. My regiment lost 995 men killed.
And instead of waiting for them to draft me, I enlisted for 21 months. Because the draftee only had, at that time, they had universal military training. And at that time, they couldn't, you could go in for 21 months, in other words, okay? So I choose to sign up.
We shipped out of there in August of 1950 for Kobe, Japan. When we got to Kobe, Japan, we combat loaded the ships with the ammunition, and we landed at Incheon, Korea at September 15th, 1950. And we took control of that beachhead at that time, and we moved on to Seoul and captured Seoul, which broke the back of the enemy at that time.
The temperature in Korea ranges from 110 degrees in the summertime with 90% humidity to 30 degrees and below in the wintertime. Korea, you know, is bordered on the north by Manchuria and Siberia, 90 miles of it being Manchuria and 11 miles of it being Siberia, so we get the cold Siberian air coming down through there.
I was inducted into the Army in January 1950, and I just had a wife who was just freshly married.
I turned 21 November 5th, 1952, and was drafted 2 weeks later, November 14th. I was shipped to Fort Eustis, Virginia for 6 weeks of basic training.
Korea is known as the land of the morning calm. Not so on the morning of 25 June 1950. At 4 a.m. on a rainy Sunday morning, at the beginning of the monsoon season, North Korea artillery barrels opened fire across the 38th parallel. The big guns proclaimed a full-scale invasion by 7 assault divisions on the North Korean Army against the Republic of Korea.
Truman was president. He sent General MacArthur along with some armed forces to South Korea to help out. But North Korea was winning, and most of our men was killed. So General MacArthur sent word back to Truman that South Koreans needed help, especially ground troops. So the U.S., along with the United Nations, joined to defend South Korea.
At that time, the 1st Marine Division decided they would stay intact and fight their way back to the harbor. And at that time, we entered ships. We went to Pusan, Korea, and reorganized there and began fighting back to the 38th parallel.
You could take care of yourself pretty good as long as you were there. But then whenever you went on patrols out away from that MLR, that's whenever you really run into trouble because you never knew what to expect.
Our job was to take the ammunition, food products, diesel, airplane diesel fuel, up north, and then when we got up there, we unhooked and went into the sort of the battle zones where hospital trains were they were standing guard over the hospital trains, and we'd hook up to them and start south with them. We'd get them probably to Seoul.
It was to mingle in with the South Koreans, and they would pull out a weapon from under those white garments that they wore and engage our forces, who of course were letting the civilians walk by, and were not expecting to be fired on from a bunch of civilian refugees.
What we did was the soldiers on the front line would come back, we'd give them a shower, probably every 6 months. You know how that is.
We shipped to Korea in the first part of 1952. I arrived at Incheon, was assigned to 4th Battalion, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division. In the west central sector of Korea, which is the Kimpo Corridor, which is the main invasion route of most ancient invasions of Korea. And at that point, I was assigned to a gun crew.
General MacArthur says that he decided on an amphibious assault in Korea almost immediately after he learned of President Truman's decision to commit American ground troops.
Well, we felt pretty good that we were out of that combat situation. However, the ship was so crowded. That ship was supposed to haul about 1,800 people, and we had maybe 6,000 people on that ship. And for about a week, that's how long it took us to get to go around and go to Pusan.
Our job was, when we landed, we were to unload the people that were lost or dying. We had to make sure the perimeter was clear of any enemy fire so that we could get back on and take off immediately. One time we had a lost patrol. We found it. We were downed. We loaded them on. We didn't have room for my buddy and I. We said we'd stay there for the next chopper. They already radioed for it. We had to stay there and hold off a bunch of, well, I don't know, a squad or two of North Koreans. And after they came, we were picked up and taken back to our base, in which later on my buddy and I both received the Bronze Star.
I was a young man, inject here a little bragging. The Marine Corps always treats and trains their men well. In other words, you know what to expect when you get to that point. You're always concerned about what's going to happen or what will happen, you know, what is happening. But as far as being afraid of a situation, I don't think so.
My biggest scare one time was I was stranded on the Han River Bridge going into Seoul with 28 cars of ammunition. They wouldn't let me off the bridge. They said, we're gonna keep you out there. I said, my God, they probably want this bridge. They said, no, we figure they're gonna bomb the yard.
We could see the enemy in their trenches, and they probably could see us too. But the 1st Marine Division, we was their backup with artillery guns. I don't know how many miles away from the MLR our guns was positioned in, but we was in a defensive position, and we was approximately, I'd say about a mile and a half away from the enemy.
Every unit had to send a patrol out every day till they contacted the enemy. Well, when they shot at you, then you withdrew. Well, every day somebody got shot, but you didn't engage them. You just went out and you wanted to see where they were. So you went out far enough to find them, and that happened all along the line. And it was.
How did you feel about that?
Well, every 3rd day you had to go out. After you came back, you felt real good because you weren't going the next day, but then the next day you started worrying again because you knew the next day you had to go out on patrol. And there was always somebody getting hurt.
And then he come back and he said, did you ever teach school? I said, well, yes, I taught Sunday school. But so he said, well, we're going to start up a new unit in Seoul. And he said, we'd like to have some people to teach. And I said, oh, yeah, I would do it.
In these little villages, you have to stop with your train. You had to watch these Korean kids, you know, God bless them, they were only kids that sneak on the train now, and they'd grab the wounded's watches and take them off their arms and run.
May 17th, I was captured. A full Chinese field army had hit our regiment, which is a couple thousand against a couple hundred. And you could look down over the mountain into the valleys, and you could see them coming forward abreast as far as you wanted to look back. That's how many hit us when I was captured.
In wintertime, it was pretty cold. In the summertime, it wasn't so bad. It was so cold that when we was lucky because we had a kitchen, but it was tents, you know. Now, our company commander always told us, he said, we're going to make sure you get one hot meal a day. Well, that never fell through.
And in the wintertime, we were constipated, and in the summer, we had diarrhea. It just never ceased. It was like that all the time.
Well, I think the worst thing, naturally, was people dying. But one of the worst things was it was a filthy, dirty place, a very cold place. And I can probably match it only with the Holdiesburg car shop, which was a wind tunnel, which was one of the coldest places I've ever been also. So I could only match it up with that.
I think we as a people don't appreciate our country. We have a great country. We have a lot of opportunities that a lot of people don't have. I was able to go to college under the GI Bill.
Just to remember us. That's the most important thing to me, to remember what we sacrificed.
The Korean War, known as the Forgotten War, it lasted 3 years, started June 25, 1950.
You can't imagine what war is all about unless you're there and experience it firsthand.
Why did it happen? Because North Korea was communist and was taking over South Korea, who was the last non-communist outpost in North Asia.